Imagine you're a billionaire tech mogul in the heart of New York City, on the brink of marrying a glamorous socialite, when a sudden car accident plunges you into a coma, shattering your perfect world. While your fiancé and brother scheme to seize your empire, a poor young hospital cleaner, a kind-hearted woman struggling to support her ailing mother, becomes your silent protector, reading to you through endless nights and uncovering the web of betrayal surrounding you. As you awaken to a life of lies, corporate sabotage, and hidden family secrets, can an unlikely romance bridge the chasm of wealth, race, and deception? Will love triumph over greed, or will long-buried truths tear everything apart? But before we dive into this gripping story of awakening betrayal and redemption, please subscribe to stay updated with more inspiring tales of unexpected love and resilience. And let us know in the comments where you're watching from today. Join us to see if Jackson Pierce and Naomi Brooks can rebuild from the ruins, or if some bonds are destined to break under the weight of the past. The morning sun beamed brightly over New York City as Jackson Pierce stepped out of his penthouse elevator. At 32, he had achieved everything a man could dream of. His technology company was valued in the billions. He was set to marry the stunning Victoria Langford, and life seemed unbeatable. "Good morning, Mr. Pierce," said Elena, the building's cleaning attendant, as she maneuvered her cart past him. He scarcely noticed her, too engrossed in checking stock prices on his phone. "Big day ahead, sir?" she inquired with a warm smile. "The biggest," he responded without glancing up. "Getting married this Saturday." In his office, Jackson's brother Damien awaited with a pile of documents. "Little brother, we need to discuss the company merger before your wedding." "Can't it wait, Damien? I've got wedding preparations to manage." Damien's expression grew stern. "You know, if you concentrated more on business and less on that high society fiancé of yours, perhaps the board wouldn't be so uneasy." "What's that supposed to mean?" Jackson retorted sharply. "It means Victoria Langford is more interested in gracing magazine covers than being your wife. Everyone sees it but you." Jackson slammed his fist on the desk. "You're just bitter because your own marriage collapsed." "Fine, ignore me. But when it all crumbles, don't say I didn't warn you." At the wedding venue, Victoria directed the decorators with exacting precision. No. I specified white roses, not cream. This has to be the social event of the year. Everything must be flawless." Her assistant Lisa hurried over with a phone. "Miss Langford People magazine wants details on your designer." Victoria's eyes sparkled. "Tell them it's a custom Vera Wang. Ensure they highlight the price tag." She turned to her friend Sophia. "Can you believe it? In 2 days I'll be Mrs. Jackson Pierce. Do you know what that means?" "That you're marrying the man you love?" Sophia asked. Victoria chuckled. "It means financial security for life. Plus being wed to one of New York's top bachelors will skyrocket my social media presence." Back at his office, Jackson gazed at a photo of him and Victoria. Something felt amiss. The merger documents his brother had delivered remained untouched on his desk. His phone vibrated with another text from Victoria about the wedding. "Mr. Pierce." It was Elena again, coming to empty his trash. "Sometimes when my heart feels heavy, I find a drive helps clear the mind." This time Jackson actually looked at her. She had compassionate eyes. "Maybe you're right," he said, grabbing his car keys. The curving coastal road had always been his spot for reflection. As he sped along in his Ferrari, doubts swirled in his thoughts. Was he making a mistake? Did Victoria truly love him? What was his brother trying to alert him to? He was so absorbed in his reverie that he didn't spot the dog until it was nearly too late. Swerving to avoid it, his car spun wildly out of control. The last sounds he heard were the shriek of tires and the crash of metal. At Mercy General Hospital, Naomi Brooks was beginning her evening shift. As a cleaning attendant, she was accustomed to witnessing all sorts of drama in these corridors, but nothing readied her for the turmoil that erupted when they wheeled in the unconscious billionaire who was due to wed in 2 days. "Get him to ICU!" doctors yelled as they hurried past her. Hours later, when the frenzy subsided, Naomi stood in the doorway of room 507. The formidable Jackson Pierce lay motionless and quiet, surrounded by beeping machines. She observed as his elegant fiancée came and went, more focused on posing for the photographers outside than staying by his side. "Don't worry," Naomi whispered as she cleaned his room that night. "Someone will stay here with you even if it's just the cleaning attendant." She had no inkling that those simple words would transform both their lives forever, or that sometimes the most profound love stories commence in the most improbable settings. The impeccable life Jackson Pierce had constructed was on the verge of collapse. But from those remnants, something infinitely more valuable would emerge, something authentic. The news of Jackson Pierce's accident swept through New York like a blaze. At Mercy General Hospital, journalists camped out around the clock, eager to glimpse the billionaire's notable visitors. Victoria Langford timed her arrivals for peak photographer presence. "Oh, darling," she would exclaim, dramatically refreshing her lipstick before entering his room. "What will happen to our wedding?" But Naomi Brooks, who cleaned the ICU rooms every night, witnessed a contrasting narrative. She saw how Victoria devoted more time to photo ops than to being with Jackson, how she never touched him unless cameras were flashing. "Your brother was here again today," Naomi told the comatose Jackson one night as she mopped the floor. "He was with some man I'd never seen before. They were discussing company shares." The man had been Victor Kane Jackson's chief business competitor. What Naomi didn't realize was that Damian Pierce was covertly scheming to assume control of his brother's enterprise. "Just sign here," Damian instructed the board members. "It's temporary until Jackson recovers. Someone has to manage operations." But in confidential meetings with Victor Kane, Damian's genuine intentions surfaced. "Once I have full authority," he vowed, "we can merge the firms. Jackson will awaken to discover he's lost it all." Back at the hospital, Naomi began lingering longer in room 507. During her breaks, she would read to Jackson from books borrowed from the library. "My grandmother always said people in comas can hear," she told him. "So I thought you might appreciate some company." One day she overheard Victoria arguing on her phone in the hallway. "I can't keep this charade going much longer," she was saying. "The press is starting to probe about the wedding. No, I don't care about his state. I care about my public image." Naomi's heart ached for Jackson. That night as she read to him from The Little Prince, she spoke gently. "You know, Mr. Pierce, sometimes the people nearest to us hide behind masks. It's the strangers who reveal their true selves." Days stretched into weeks. Naomi noticed the visitor stream dwindling. Even Victoria's camera-prepared appearances grew infrequent. "I have a charity gala," she would justify to the nurses. "I'm certain Jackson would want me to uphold our social commitments." But Naomi stayed steadfast. Every night she would clean his room and converse with him. She shared details of her life, how she was funding her own nursing education, how she took this job to cover her mother's medical expenses. "I know you probably can't hear me," she said one night, "but everyone needs someone to confide in, even if they're asleep." What she didn't observe was how Jackson's finger would occasionally twitch at her words, how his heart rate would stabilize when she read. Meanwhile, Damian's scheme progressed flawlessly. He had already shifted majority control of several vital subsidiaries to his name. The merger with Victor Kane's company was almost finalized. Soon, he confided to Kane over premium whiskey, "My little brother's domain will be ours to divide." But he hadn't anticipated Rosa, an veteran secretary who had served the Pierce family for 2 decades. She had spotted the dubious paperwork and begun duplicating it. "Something's amiss," she told Naomi one day while visiting Jackson. "The company's being dismantled bit by bit." Naomi felt powerless. "What can I do? I'm just a cleaning attendant." "Sometimes," Rosa said sagely, "being unseen means you observe everything." That night, Naomi resolved to act. As she cleaned Jackson's room, she started recounting everything: his brother's visits, Victoria's true character, Rosa's suspicions. "I know it's not my place," she said, clasping his hand, "but you deserve the truth. You need to wake up before it's too late." And then something pivotal occurred. As she turned to depart, she felt it the faintest squeeze on her hand. Naomi froze. "Mr. Pierce." His eyelids fluttered. She dashed to summon the nurse, her heart racing. As the medical team surged in, she lingered in the doorway, watching as Jackson Pierce commenced his return to awareness. But the world awaiting him was vastly altered from the one he'd left. And the woman who would assist him in reconstructing it wasn't his glamorous fiancée. It was the unassuming cleaning attendant who had accompanied him through the shadows. The masks were poised to fall, and nothing would remain unchanged. The physicians deemed it a miracle. After 2 months in a coma, Jackson Pierce opened his eyes to a realm he scarcely identified. The first face he beheld wasn't Victoria's, but Naomi's, as she discreetly cleaned his room on the night shift. "Water," he murmured, his voice raspy from inactivity. Naomi startled at hearing him speak. She swiftly aided him in sipping water through a straw. "I'll fetch the doctor," she said, preparing to exit. "Wait," Jackson called feebly. "Your voice. I recognize your voice." Naomi halted. "You could hear me." "Fragments, stories. The Little Prince." His eyes strained to focus on her face. "You were here every night." Before Naomi could reply, the room swarmed with medical personnel. She slipped away quietly, her pulse quickening. In the corridor, she dialed Rosa. "He's awake," she said. "We need to act swiftly." Within hours, the hospital teemed with reporters. Damien Pierce arrived first, his countenance a facade of fraternal worry. "Thank heavens you're alive," he said, clasping Jackson's hand too firmly. "Don't fret about anything. I've been handling business." Victoria stormed in next, impeccably groomed despite the hour. "Darling," she wailed with camera flashes trailing her, "I've been utterly devastated without you." But Jackson's gaze kept wandering to the doorway, seeking the cleaning attendant with the familiar voice. "Where's Naomi?" he inquired during a calm moment. "Who?" Victoria scowled. "The cleaning attendant. She was here every night." Victoria laughed. "Darling, you must be disoriented. Why would a cleaning attendant matter?" But Jackson wasn't disoriented. During his coma, Naomi's voice had anchored him. He recalled her words, her tales, her cautions about his brother and Victoria. That night, after visitors departed, Naomi returned to clean his room. "They're saying you'll recover fully," she said, maintaining distance. "Tell me everything," Jackson urged. "Everything you witnessed while I was asleep." So, Naomi recounted Damien's clandestine meetings with Victor Kane, Victoria's phone calls, and staged visits, Rosa's findings of questionable documents. "Your brother has been reallocating company assets," she clarified. "Rosa's been compiling evidence." Jackson's expression hardened. "And Victoria?" Naomi paused. "She was more concerned with photo opportunities than visiting you. I'm sorry." Jackson closed his eyes, anguish etching his features. "Don't apologize. While everyone else wore masks, you were the only one sharing the truth." The following day, Jackson summoned his lawyer. Though still frail, his intellect was keen. "I want a thorough audit of all company transactions during my coma," he commanded, "and retrieve every document Damien signed." When Damien visited later, Jackson feigned grogginess and confusion. "The doctors mention memory loss is typical after a coma," he said innocently, noting his brother's relief. "Don't concern yourself," Damien reassured. "Everything's managed." But that night, Jackson had Naomi sneak Rosa into his room with duplicates of the gathered documents. "They assumed no one was watching," Rosa said, laying papers across his bed. "But I've served your family's company for 20 years. I know every ploy." The proof was incriminating. Damien had methodically transferred control of key subsidiaries, gearing up for a merger that would leave Jackson destitute. "Your brother's meeting Kane tomorrow night at the Regency Hotel," Naomi added. "Rosa overheard them planning to seal the deal." Jackson reached for Naomi's hand. "Why are you aiding me?" "Because," she replied simply, "during those 2 months I came to know the real you. Not the billionaire, not the CEO, just you." Their eyes locked, and a spark ignited between them. But before either could speak, Victoria burst into the room. "What is this?" she demanded, glaring at their clasped hands. "Why are you holding hands with the cleaning attendant?" Naomi quickly withdrew, but Jackson held steady. "She's the one who revealed your deceptions, Victoria. All those times you visited for photos while conspiring with my brother." Victoria's composed face faltered. "You don't understand. Damien promised me a portion of everything once he gained control. We were going to be together." The revelation struck Jackson like a blow. His fiancée and his brother, the two he trusted most. "Get out," he said calmly. "Get out before I summon security." After Victoria fled in tears, Naomi began to leave as well. "I should go." "Stay," Jackson implored. "Please, I need someone trustworthy." As Naomi sat beside his bed, neither realized they were embarking on the battle of their lives. Damien wouldn't surrender easily, and somewhere in the city, Victor Kane was priming to claim all Jackson had created. But for the first time since awakening, Jackson felt fortified, because now he knew his true allies. And sometimes the mightiest weapon isn't wealth or sway, it's having someone who champions the truth. What would you do if you discovered betrayal from those closest to you while recovering from a life-altering accident? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you'd handle such a twist of fate. The Regency Hotel's upscale restaurant hummed with subdued chatter as Damien Pierce and Victor Kane occupied a secluded booth. Champagne glasses lifted in triumph. "By this time tomorrow," Damien smirked, "Pierce Innovations will be ours. My little brother won't know what hit him." But at that precise instant, Jackson Pierce was anything but defenseless. In his hospital room, he had gathered an improbable team: Rosa with her evidence stack, Naomi with her meticulous observations, and Robert Hayes, his most reliable lawyer. "Your brother got careless," Robert said, examining the documents. "He didn't think anyone was monitoring, but these transfers won't stand in court." "I don't want to wait for court," Jackson responded, his voice firmer now. "I want to halt them tonight." Naomi, fresh off her shift, chimed in from her seat by his bed. "The meeting at the Regency Hotel, if we catch them in the act." "Exactly." Jackson attempted to sit taller, grimacing. "But I'm still too weak to go myself." "Perhaps you don't need to," Rosa pondered. "Sometimes the best strategies are the unseen ones." An hour later, Naomi entered the Regency Hotel in a borrowed waitress outfit. Rosa had leveraged a favor from her cousin employed there. In her apron pocket, Naomi carried a small recorder. "Remember," Jackson had told her, squeezing her hand, "you don't have to do this." "I want to," she had answered. "They must answer for what they did to you." Now, as she neared Damien's table with a fresh champagne bottle, her heart thumped. She could hear them distinctly as she feigned difficulty with the cork. "Once these papers are signed," Kane was stating, We'll hold controlling interest. Jackson will be a mere figurehead." "Poor little brother," Damien chuckled, still confined to that hospital bed, trusting his big brother to handle everything. Naomi's hands quivered with indignation as she finally uncorked the bottle. As she poured, she intentionally spilled some on Damien's sleeve. "You fool," he snapped. "This suit costs more than your annual salary." "I'm so sorry, sir," Naomi apologized, patting his jacket while ensuring the recorder captured every word. "Let me fetch something to clean that." Back in the hospital, Jackson was phoning board members one by one, sowing doubts about Damien's conduct. "Examine the transfer logs," he advised them. "Pose questions. Scrutinize where the funds are truly going." Victoria chose that moment to slink into his room. She had swapped her typical designer attire for a plain black ensemble, her face bare of makeup. "I can explain everything," she started. "Can you—" Jackson's tone was frigid. "Can you explain why my fiancé was colluding with my brother to pilfer my company?" "I never intended to fall for him," Victoria murmured. "It just occurred, and then he pledged me everything, the wealth, the prestige, the influence." "Get out," Jackson's words sliced sharply. "You and my brother are perfect for each other." As Victoria escaped sobbing, Naomi returned with the recording. Her hands shook as she replayed it. Damien and Kane's voices echoed in the room, outlining their full plot. "Distribute copies to every board member," Jackson directed Robert. "I want them to hear precisely what sort of man they've entrusted." But Damien had one final maneuver. Bursting into Jackson's hospital room the next morning, he brandished a sheaf of papers. "Sign these," he insisted. "Relinquish your voting rights, or I'll ensure everyone learns about your little affair with the cleaning attendant." Naomi, who had been refreshing Jackson's water pitcher, stiffened. "You'd really descend that low?" Jackson asked softly. "The media would devour it," Damien sneered. "Billionaire loses sanity post-coma enamored with lowly cleaning woman. Your standing would be demolished." Jackson glanced at Naomi, then back at his brother. "You know what, Damien, proceed. Tell everyone. Because I'd rather forfeit my reputation than forfeit my integrity like you have." Damien's face flushed with fury. He seized Naomi's arm harshly. "This is your doing, you opportunistic little—" But he never completed the phrase, because Jackson Pierce, still weakened from his coma, mustered the strength to rise from bed and strike his brother squarely on the jaw. As Damien tumbled to the floor, security guards stormed in. Behind them came Robert Hayes, clutching the recorded evidence from the hotel. "Mr. Pierce," one guard addressed Damien, "you'll need to accompany us. The board wishes to converse with you promptly." As they escorted Damien away, Naomi assisted Jackson back to bed. His hands trembled from the exertion, but his eyes were resolute. "I meant what I said," he told her tenderly. "I don't care what anyone thinks. You're the only genuine element in my life right now." Naomi gazed at their intertwined hands, his polished, affluent ones, and her calloused, labor-worn ones. "What happens now?" "Now," Jackson smiled. "Now we counterattack together." Outside the hospital windows, the sun ascended over New York City. A fresh day dawned, one that would alter everything for the cleaning attendant who dared to care, and the billionaire who discovered that true riches aren't quantified in currency. But Damien Pierce wasn't concluded yet, and somewhere in the city, machinations were already in motion that would challenge their emerging connection in unimaginable ways. Have you ever experienced a moment where an unexpected ally changed your life during a crisis? Like if this story of unlikely support resonates with you, and subscribe for more narratives of triumph over adversity. Damien Pierce sat in his opulent apartment, tending to both his bruised jaw and shattered ego. His phone vibrated with another missive from the board of directors, his third formal admonition. But he ignored them. Instead, his gaze fixed on an aged photograph of his father. "You always favored Jackson," he grumbled, pouring another drink. "Well, observe what transpires next." Across town, Jackson was finally discharged from the hospital. Naomi aided him in packing the few items he'd amassed during his stay, including all the books she'd read to him. "You don't need to keep those," she said, abashed by their tattered library covers. "They're significant to me," Jackson replied softly. "They remind me of who was truly there when I needed someone." But their serene moment was disrupted by a throng of reporters outside the hospital entrance. Headlines about the Pierce family scandal had detonated across every tabloid and news site. "Pierce heir awakens to betrayal. Billionaire's brother ensnared in takeover plot. Society bride abandons coma victim for his brother." And now a new headline gained momentum. "Billionaire and the cleaning attendant, a hospital romance." "Don't regard them," Jackson advised, noticing Naomi's unease as flashes erupted. "They don't matter." But other matters did, like the anonymous note Naomi discovered in her locker that morning. "Opportunists receive their due," or the way some hospital colleagues had begun murmuring behind her back. Even her supervisor had summoned her for a cordial discussion about preserving professional limits with patients. "Maybe I should resign," Naomi confided to Rosa during their lunch break. "Seek another hospital." "That's precisely what they desire," Rosa retorted firmly. "Since when do you flee from intimidators?" Meanwhile, Jackson confronted his own skirmishes. His initial day back at the office was a labyrinth of insincere grins and concealed motives. Not all were pleased with Damien's ouster from the board. "Your brother had solid notions about updating," one board member remarked. "Perhaps you're being overly rash." "My brother had notions about theft," Jackson corrected icily. Anyone who backed him might wish to reassess their stance. But Damien wasn't finished scheming. In a dimly lit bar downtown, he convened with a private investigator. "I want all on her," he commanded, sliding Naomi's photo across the table. "Every secret, every vulnerability, everyone she cherishes." The investigator assented. "What about the other issue?" Damien's grin was vicious. "Yes, ensure those financial records are precisely where the SEC will locate them. My brother's going to experience what it's like to lose everything." Back at his penthouse, Jackson pored over years of company records with Robert Hayes. The lawyer's demeanor was somber. "Damien didn't merely assail the company," Robert elucidated. "He embedded something far graver: fabricated records, altered documents. If the SEC uncovers them, I could face imprisonment," Jackson concluded quietly. Naomi arrived post-shift to find him encircled by papers, his face etched with concern. Without a word, she brewed coffee, slipping into the familiar routine they'd established in the hospital. "You don't have to remain," Jackson said. "This could turn nasty." Naomi placed his coffee down. "Do you recall what you read in The Little Prince about what renders something special?" "It's the time invested in it," Jackson quoted gently. "I've invested too much time caring for you to depart now," she said plainly. But life had alternate designs. That night, Naomi received an urgent call from her mother's nursing home. The monthly payment had bounced. All her accounts were abruptly frozen. When she contacted the bank in panic, the explanation was stark and unequivocal. "There's an inquiry into dubious deposits' potential involvement in financial fraud." Naomi felt nauseous. Damien was targeting her too, framing it as if she'd been compensated to spy on Jackson. Across town, Victoria was granting an exclusive interview. "I attempted to caution everyone about that cleaning woman," she said, dabbing her eyes. "The manner she manipulated poor Jackson while he was defenseless." And in his office, Damien toasted his computer screen, observing his plans unfold. He'd learned from his errors. This time he would demolish his brother, not by assaulting his finances, but by assaulting his heart. But he hadn't reckoned on one factor: the security camera footage Rosa had covertly recorded of him planting the false documents, or the reality that Naomi, despite her frozen accounts and tarnished reputation, wasn't budging. That night, as rain hammered against the penthouse windows, Naomi and Jackson sat together on his couch, both weary from battle, but resolute. "We could flee," Naomi suggested half-jokingly. "Relocate to a small town, alter our names." Jackson took her hand. "I've spent my entire life evading genuine emotions, concealing behind wealth and status. Not anymore. So what do? We fight. But first," he drew her nearer. "There's something I've yearned to do since I first opened my eyes and saw you in that hospital room." As their lips met for the first time, neither noticed Rosa's urgent text messages or the breaking news alert about a startling revelation in the Pierce Company archives. The tempest was far from concluded, but at least now they possessed something worth defending. Rosa's pressing text messages eventually penetrated at midnight. "Turn on the news now." Jackson and Naomi parted from their kiss to discover every channel broadcasting the same astonishing story. Vintage photographs flooded the screen images of Jackson and Damien's father with another family. Sources verify that the late Harrison Pierce had a concealed second family, the reporter declared, including another son who may have a legal stake in the Pierce fortune. Jackson sat immobilized, his world tilting anew in mere month. That's impossible. But the evidence stared back from the screen documents photos, and a man bearing a striking resemblance to his father, Lucas Rivera, age 40, a construction worker from Brooklyn. "Did you know?" Jackson asked Rosa when she arrived at the penthouse, still in her nightwear. "I uncovered the files tonight," she explained. "Hidden in your father's old office, but Damien reached the press first." Naomi observed the anguish cross Jackson's face. "Why would your brother disclose this now?" "Because," Jackson said grimly, "if this Lucas has a valid claim, it could immobilize all company assets amid a legal dispute. Everything would stall, including the probe into Damien's fabricated documents." Robert Hayes added, arriving with legal papers. "He's gaining time." But Damien had underestimated his brother once more. Instead of shunning the scandal, Jackson did the unforeseen. He journeyed to Brooklyn. "You don't have to accompany," he told Naomi as they drove through the pre-dawn streets. "I know," she replied simply. "I want to." They located Lucas Rivera's apartment building just as he departed for work. The likeness to Harrison Pierce was uncanny. "I wondered when one of you would appear," Lucas said, unsurprised. "Though I expected it would be the brother who's been contacting me all week." "Damien reached out to you?" Jackson asked. "Offered me $5 million to publicly assert my rightful inheritance." Lucas scoffed. "Didn't disclose he was truly using me to sabotage you." Inside Lucas's humble apartment over coffee in mismatched mugs, the truth emerged. Yes, Harrison Pierce had another family. Yes, Lucas was his son. "But I've known since I was 18, Lucas explained. "Your father confessed, established a trust fund for me. I never desired his money or name. I had my own life, my own family." "Then why surface now?" "Because your brother discovered my daughter." Lucas's face hardened. "She's ill, requires costly treatments. Damien threatened to sabotage her care if I didn't comply." Naomi, who had been silent, suddenly interjected, "Like he froze my bank accounts and jeopardized my mother's nursing home care." Comprehension dawned on Jackson's face. "He's exploiting the people we love against us. But Damien's scheme was about to rebound dramatically, because now Jackson possessed evidence of extortion to supplement Rosa's security footage. Back at the penthouse, an emergency board meeting convened. This time every member attended, including some Jackson hadn't encountered in years. "Before we commence," Jackson announced, "I'd like you to meet someone." Lucas Rivera entered, followed by Naomi and Rosa. On the screen behind them, Damien's blackmail efforts played, captured by Rosa's meticulous recordings. "My brother views family as a liability," Jackson proceeded, "something to manipulate. But genuine family blood, or chosen, is our utmost strength." One by one, the facts surfaced: Damien's plots, the falsified SEC documents, the assaults on Naomi and Lucas's families. "I propose an immediate vote," the senior board member proclaimed, "to oust Damien Pierce from all company roles and freeze his assets pending criminal inquiry." The vote was unanimous. But in his apartment across town, Damien viewed the news coverage with an odd smile. He retrieved his phone and dialed. "It's time," he said to the recipient. "Disclose everything we have on the cleaning attendant and place that call to the nursing home." Naomi's phone rang minutes later. Her mother had fallen. The nurse indicated it was grave. As she and Jackson hastened to the hospital, neither spotted the man tailing their car or the fact that every traffic light they encountered turned red, delaying them sufficiently. Because while they raced across town, something was transpiring at Pierce Innovations, something that would dwarf the secret family scandal. And in a private airport hangar, Victor Kane boarded his jet carrying a USB drive laden with data sufficient to annihilate not merely the company, but everyone Jackson cherished. The authentic conflict was just commencing, and this time the losses wouldn't be tallied in finances, but in the lives of innocents ensnared in the fray. As Naomi clutched Jackson's hand during the drive, she recalled something her mother once imparted. "Love is like a lighthouse in a storm. The larger the waves, the brighter it glows." They were about to discover just how luminous their light could be, and whether it would suffice to navigate them through the impending obscurity. The emergency room at Brooklyn Memorial Hospital was pandemonium when Naomi and Jackson arrived. They found Naomi's mother, Clara Brooks, already in surgery for a fractured hip. "She was fine this morning," Naomi insisted to the nurse. "How could she fall?" But deep inside she knew. This bore Damien's signature. Jackson's phone buzzed, incessantly urgent messages from the office he disregarded to remain with Naomi. Finally, Robert Hayes' call demanded attention. "The whole system is offline," Robert reported. "Every computer in the building darkened 10 minutes ago, and there's more." Naomi watched Jackson's face blanch as he listened. When he disconnected, his hands trembled. "Damien didn't just target the company computers," he explained. "He unearthed something in my father's old files, something that could obliterate everything. What could be worse than a secret family? A secret pact." Jackson raked his hands through his hair. 20 years ago, my father allegedly pilfered the core technology that founded Pierce Innovations. If that evidence emerges, all those jobs, Naomi whispered, all those individuals reliant on the company. The nurse interrupted with updates on Clara. The surgery succeeded, but an issue arose with her medical records. Her insurance abruptly showed as lapsed. "That's impossible," Naomi protested. "I just paid." But she hadn't. She couldn't. Not with her accounts immobilized. "I'll manage it," Jackson said promptly, reaching for his wallet. "No." Naomi halted him. "Damien's attempting to portray me as exploiting you for money. I won't grant him that gratification." "Then what do we do?" a fresh voice responded from the doorway. "We counter together." It was Lucas Rivera, still in his construction garb. Behind him stood Rosa, bearing a stack of folders. "Those files Damien found," Rosa said. "There's something he overlooked." Meanwhile, across town, Damian Pierce celebrated his perceived victory with Victor Kane in a private club. A toast! Kane raised his glass to the downfall of the mighty Jackson Pierce. But Damian's smile waned when his phone buzzed with a message, a video link. When he clicked it, his blood chilled. There was his father, Harrison Pierce, 2 decades younger, seated at his desk, recording a message. "If you're viewing this," the recorded Harrison stated, "then someone has discovered the false evidence I planted regarding stealing technology, a safeguard should either of my sons ever misuse the company for personal avarice rather than communal benefit." Damian slammed his phone down, but not before Kane glimpsed it. "What was that?" "Nothing," Damian snapped, but his hands quivered as he texted his contact at the nursing home. "Is it done?" The response was unexpected. Police here inquiring about suspicious activity. Because while Damian had concentrated on Naomi's mother, he'd overlooked the network of individuals Naomi had assisted during her hospital tenure, like Officer Tom Reyes, whose mother she'd tended in the ICU. Officer Reyes, who now possessed a compelling security tape depicting a man sabotaging Clara Brooks's walker just prior to her fall. Back at Brooklyn Memorial, Naomi's phone illuminated with supportive messages. Hospital staff she'd collaborated with for years, patients she'd aided, families who recalled her benevolence, all proffering assistance with her mother's care. "I don't comprehend," she told Jackson, "after everything Damian did to sully my reputation." "He doesn't grasp that true power isn't about money or dominance," Jackson replied. "It's about the lives you impact." Rosa burst in with breaking news on her tablet. The stolen technology tale was being dismantled by tech journalists who'd unearthed Harrison Pierce's original patents. The truth was surfacing, but Damian had one ultimate ploy. In his private safe, he possessed something even his father hadn't known. Something that would compel Jackson to choose between salvaging the company and safeguarding Naomi. At Pierce Innovations, the computers abruptly reactivated, but instead of standard interfaces, every monitor displayed the same image, young Naomi Brooks, in a police station being fingerprinted 10 years ago. Damian's voice emanated from the speakers. "Our little cleaning attendant was arrested. Would you like to know why, brother?" Jackson looked at Naomi, whose face had paled. "He found it," she whispered. "The one thing I never disclosed to you. The reason I care for my mother. The reason I became a cleaning attendant instead of completing nursing school." Outside the hospital room, thunder boomed across the sky. A storm was erupting over New York City, but the genuine maelstrom was just initiating. Because Naomi's secret wasn't what Damian assumed, and when the truth emerged, it wouldn't merely alter her bond with Jackson, it would rattle the very bedrock of the Pierce family. As rain lashed the windows, Naomi inhaled deeply. It was time to narrate the tale she'd concealed for a decade. A tale that commenced with another hospital, another affluent family, and a decision that had tormented her since. "Your father," she said quietly to Jackson. "I met him once. The night everything shifted." Lightning illuminated tears in her eyes. The past was about to clash with the present, and nothing would endure unaltered. Naomi's hands shook as she withdrew an old locket from beneath her uniform. Inside was a faded photo of a younger Harrison Pierce beside a nurse, Naomi's mother, Clara, 20 years prior. "My mother was a nurse at Riverside Medical," Naomi began. "Your father was her patient after his first heart attack, the one no one knew about." Jackson sat heavily. Father never had a heart attack. He concealed it, said it would damage the company if people deemed him frail. Naomi's voice was scarcely audible. "He was there for 2 weeks. My mother cared for him. They grew close." Understanding flickered on Lucas Rivera's face. Like my mother. No. Naomi shook her head. Nothing transpired, but he witnessed how diligently my mother labored, how she struggled to finance nursing school for me. He established a private account to assist us. Rosa extracted an old file. That's why I recognized your name. There were payments to Clara Brooks for years. But the arrest, Jackson pressed gently. Damien said, 10 years ago your father suffered another heart attack, a severe one. He managed to call my mother. She was the only one aware of his condition. Naomi's eyes brimmed with tears. She got him to the hospital in time, but the doctors said he required emergency surgery. They needed next of kin to sign the forms. But Damien and I were abroad, Jackson recalled. A business trip to London. Mother forged Damien's signature on the consent forms. She knew every minute was critical. Naomi's voice cracked. She saved your father's life. But when Damien discovered he had her arrested. For forgery. Jackson finished, fury mounting in his voice. Your father tried to intervene, but he was too feeble post-surgery. By the time he recuperated, the harm was inflicted. Mother lost her nursing license. I had to abandon nursing school to sustain us. Why didn't father rectify it later? He attempted. He created a trust fund for us, ensured we were provided for, but 3 days before he planned to restore mother's license. Naomi couldn't continue. He died, Rosa said softly, and Damien ensured all traces of his pledges vanished. Suddenly, slow clapping resonated in the hospital room. Damien stood in the doorway, his face contorted in a sneer. What a poignant tale, he said. The noble cleaning attendant who sacrificed all. But you omitted one detail, didn't you, Naomi, about what else occurred that night? Naomi blanched. Don't. The night our father had his second heart attack. Damien persisted cruelly. He altered his will. I found the draft in his papers. He intended to bequeath controlling interest in the company to a foundation administered by Clara Brooks's daughter. The room hushed. Jackson stared at Naomi in astonishment. That's why you drew close to my brother, isn't it? Damien pressed. Attempting to claim what you believe is yours. No. Naomi rose, trembling. I never knew about the will. I cared for Jackson because he needed someone. Because She halted, gazing at Jackson's stunned face. Because you what? Damien mocked. Love him, please. You're just like everyone else vying for a slice of the Pierce fortune. That's enough. The new voice emanated from the doorway. Everyone pivoted to see an elderly man in a fine suit, Judge Edward Thornton, head of the Pierce Company board. I received your message, Rosa, he said, holding up a phone. And I think it's time everyone learned the truth about that night. Damien's smirk wavered. What are you referring to? I was there, the judge said quietly. I drove Harrison to the hospital when he called Clara. I was his closest friend and I knew all his secrets. He turned to Jackson, including why he truly wanted Naomi to oversee the foundation. From his briefcase, Judge Thornton extracted a sealed envelope. Your father entrusted me with this to be opened only if his children ever turned against one another. I'd say that moment has arrived. With quivering hands, Jackson opened the letter and read his father's final words aloud. My dear sons, if you're reading this, then my gravest fear has materialized. You've allowed avarice and authority to pit you against each other. I endeavored to instill that a company transcends profits. It's about the lives we influence. Naomi Brooks grasped that even as a young girl visiting her mother at the hospital, she extended kindness without knowing my identity. That's why I desired her to steer the company's future, not due to who she was, but who she is. Jackson looked up at Naomi, viewing her anew. All those nights she devoted reading to him in the hospital, tending him without seeking recompense. She embodied his father's legacy unwittingly. This is absurd, Damien stammered. You can't seriously believe... But he was cut off by a disturbance in the hallway. Police officers were escorting away the man who had tampered with Clara's walker, and he was confessing. "Mr. Pierce hired me," he was declaring. Him and Mr. Kane, they aimed to harm the old lady to reach her daughter. Damien retreated, but security guards obstructed his exit. His phone buzzed. Victor Kane was being apprehended at the airport. Everything was unraveling. But for Naomi and Jackson, clarity was finally dawning. "I never coveted the company," Naomi said softly. "I just wanted to assist people as my mother taught me, as your father believed I could." Jackson took her hand, comprehending at last why he'd felt so compelled toward her from the outset. In a realm of facades and falsehoods, she had been authentic. But Damien wasn't defeated, and what he would do next would render all his prior machinations seem trivial, because he hadn't merely uncovered Harrison Pierce's old will. He'd discovered something else, something that would compel everyone to choose between justice and compassion, between love and obligation. And this time there would be no retreat. Damien Pierce stood trapped in the hospital room, yet the smile lingered on his face. With deliberate leisure, he withdrew a USB drive from his pocket. "You know what's on this?" he queried, dangling it enticingly. "Every sordid deal father ever executed, every bribe, every concealment, every family skeleton, including some truths about mother that would shatter poor Jackson's heart." Jackson advanced. "You're fabricating." "Am I?" Damien's eyes gleamed. "Did you ever ponder why mother truly departed, why she forsaken her beloved sons? Father didn't just have liaisons, little brother. He had an entire clandestine existence, and mother unearthed something so appalling about his business affairs that she couldn't endure it." Naomi felt Jackson's hand clench in hers. She knew how profoundly he had revered his mother, who vanished when he was 12. "Here's my proposal," Damien continued. "Permit me to depart with a substantial settlement naturally, and all these secrets remain interred. Attempt to prosecute me, and I disseminate everything. The Pierce name will be eternally tarnished." Judge Thornton stepped forth. "You'd demolish your own family's heritage." "Family?" Damien laughed acridly. "Survey this room. A cleaning attendant, a secret half-brother, an old judge who aided father in concealing his deception some heritage." But he had erred in calculation. Because at that instant, Clara Brooks opened her eyes in the hospital bed. "Naomi," she called faintly. "Is that Harrison's boy?" Everyone turned. Clara was gazing directly at Damien with a tender smile. "I recall when you were little," she said softly. "You used to visit the hospital with your father. Such a melancholic boy, always seeking his notice." Damien's poise fractured. "Shut up. You know nothing about me. You would sketch pictures for the ill children," Clara persisted. "Your father was so proud. He preserved everyone." "He did not." Damien's voice escalated. "He never cared about anything I did." "Second drawer of his desk," Judge Thornton said quietly. "Behind the false panel. Every drawing, every school report, every newspaper clipping about you. He termed it his Damien box." The USB drive quivered in Damien's hand. "You're deceiving. He always preferred Jackson." "No," came a new voice. Rosa entered holding an old leather journal. "Your father's private diary. Listen to this. Damien strives so hard to validate himself to become what he thinks I desire. If only he could see I'm proud of him just as he is." Tears welled in Damien's eyes. "Then why did he confide in everyone else with his secrets? Why not me?" "Because you were too akin to him," Clara said gently. "So fearful of displaying weakness, of allowing people in. He wanted better for you." Damien's legs buckled. He sank into a chair, the USB drive slipping from his limp fingers. Naomi retrieved it, but instead of handing it to Jackson or the police, she extended it to Damien. "Your father's secrets perished with him," she said softly. "These are yours now. To safeguard or destroy your decision." Damien stared at her, then at his brother. "Why would you entrust me with this?" "Because Jackson said, 'You're still my brother.' And father was correct. There are more vital things than money or power." Slowly, Damien accepted the drive. With trembling hands, he snapped it in two. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for everything." But the moment was disrupted by urgent shouts from the hallway. Victor Kane had escaped custody. And he had seized something from his office before the police arrived, proof of an even grander scandal, one that could devastate not just the Pierces, but hundreds of innocent families. "He's en route to the press," an officer reported. "If those documents leak..." Jackson and Damien exchanged glances. Years of antagonism dissolved in the face of a shared adversary. "The old tunnel entrance," Damien said, "from when the building was a newspaper office. Kane doesn't know about it." Jackson nodded. "We can intercept him before he reaches the media center." "I'm joining." Lucas stepped forward. "That's what family does." As the three brothers dashed out, Naomi sensed a shift in the atmosphere. The storm that had ravaged their lives was finally dissipating. But in its aftermath, something novel was blossoming, something sturdier than secrets or lies or ancient grievances. Clara reached for her daughter's hand. "Your father would be proud," she said softly. "Harrison always said love was the finest investment." Naomi watched through the window as Jackson, Damien, and Lucas drove away together. But would it suffice? Because Victor Kane wasn't merely fleeing with documents. He was fleeing with a truth so volatile it could rend not just the Pierce family, but the entire city. And time was ebbing. Rain pummeled the streets of New York as three vehicles hurtled through the night. In the first, Jackson gripped the wheel, his mind outpacing the car. In the second, Damien maneuvered the side streets he'd mastered during years of covert transactions. And in the third, Lucas drove with the expertise of one who'd labored these roads his entire life. Their quarry, Victor Kane, sped toward the media center with documents that could annihilate everything. "He's veering onto Fifth Avenue," Damien's voice crackled via their phones. "The tunnel entrance is 2 blocks ahead." But Kane wasn't solitary. A sleek black car drew alongside him, Victoria Langford making one final bid for power and vengeance. Back at the hospital, Naomi paced anxiously. Rosa burst in with her tablet displaying traffic cameras. "They've cornered him," she reported. "But Victoria's there too." Clara reached for her daughter's hand. "Go," she said softly. "They need you." Naomi hesitated. "Mom, I've spent my life guiding others." Clara smiled. "Now it's your turn." Across town, Kane and Victoria arrived at the media center's underground parking garage, but as they hastened toward the elevator, their path was obstructed. "It's over, Victor," Jackson said, emerging from the shadows. Damien and Lucas flanked him. Kane laughed. "Three brothers allied. How poignant, but too tardy." He brandished a folder. "One call to my contact upstairs, and every buried secret your father interred emerges, including the true reason he launched Pierce Innovations." "We know about the stolen technology," Damien said. "Stolen..." Kane's laugh turned malevolent. "Oh no, far worse. Your father erected his company on blood money, drug money, mob ties, all laundered through that initial tech venture." Jackson felt the world whirl. "You're lying." "Am I? Ask your brother. Ask Judge Thornton." They all knew. Why do you think your mother truly left? Victoria advanced, her designer heels echoing on concrete. Just yield what we demand, Jackson. A fair portion of the company or everything incinerates. But another voice resounded. No more deceptions. Everyone turned. Naomi stood there clutching an old leather journal. Harrison Pierce's genuine diary. Rosa found this in your office, Victor. Behind the wall safe. Her voice was steady. You've been extorting the Pierce family for years, but you never perused the final entry. She opened the journal and read. Today, I finally possess the proof to terminate Kane's grip on us. The blood money was his all along, laundered through shell entities. He's been menacing to expose his own offenses, letting my family bear the blame. But no more. Mary, my love, if you ever read this, I didn't operate that startup with mob funds. I was collaborating with the FBI to unmask Kane's operation. That's why you had to depart, to remain secure until we could substantiate everything. Jackson stared at the journal. Mother was in witness protection. Naomi nodded. Rosa located her. Jackson, she's alive, safe, awaiting return home. Kane lunged for the journal, but Lucas intercepted him. Victoria attempted to flee, but Damien barred her path. You know what I learned from construction work, Lucas said, restraining Kane. Sometimes you must demolish everything to erect something stronger. Police sirens wailed outside. Officer Tom Reyes led a team into the garage. Victor Kane, he announced. You're under arrest for extortion, blackmail, and conspiracy. Ms. Langford, you'll accompany him. As they led Kane and Victoria away, Jackson turned to Naomi. How did you know to check behind the safe? Because your father left a hint. She smiled. In the story, he used to tell my mother about a girl who discovered a garden behind a wall. I remembered you mentioning the same story last week. Damien stepped forward, his face laden with remorse. All these years I thought father was corrupt. That's why I grew so resentful, so ravenous for power to prove I could surpass him. He was shielding all of us, Jackson realized, even when we were unaware. Rain persisted outside, but gentler now, purifying, renewing. 3 months later, the Pierce Innovations building shimmered in the spring sunlight. Inside, transformations abounded. Damien led the new security division, employing his insight into corporate shadows to foster transparency. Lucas managed the Pierce Foundation, aiding needy families, commencing with his daughter's medical treatment. And in the CEO's office, Jackson sat with Naomi, organizing their wedding, a modest ceremony in the hospital garden where they first connected. Clara would escort her daughter down the aisle, and in the front row, Mary Pierce would finally witness her sons united. You know what I realized, Jackson said, embracing Naomi. All those years directing a tech firm, I never comprehended my father's paramount innovation. What was that? Understanding that real power isn't in circuits or currency or secrets. It's in here. He touched his heart. In love, in family, in trust. Naomi smiled. Your father knew something else too. What? That sometimes the grandest love stories don't commence with a tycoon and a debutante. Sometimes they begin with a billionaire and a dedicated cleaning attendant who were courageous enough to peer beyond the facade to what truly counts. Outside the window, New York City gleamed with potential. In the Pierce Innovations lobby, a new plaque adorned beside Harrison Pierce's portrait. Success isn't gauged in dollars, but in lives impacted and hearts transformed. And in the hospital where it all originated, a garden flourished, where concrete once dominated a sanctuary, where individuals from diverse backgrounds could discover healing hope and perhaps even love. Because ultimately that's what the Pierce legacy evolved into, not a chronicle of authority or affluence or vendetta, but a testament that authentic love transcends every disguise, mends every scar, and constructs bridges across every chasm. All it demands is the valor to unlock your heart and invite the light. As the years passed, the Pierce Brooks family flourished their union, a beacon of forgiveness, strength, and the everyday miracles that bind souls. From boardroom triumphs to serene family gatherings in the blooming hospital garden, their odyssey illustrated that it's never too late to embrace truth, and that the most enduring empires are forged on the bedrock of unwavering love and chosen family.